Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes and dislikes. This time I'm talking to Ty Bowmaker about his work, NFTs and a range of other topics I hope you'll find interesting. Heading up Captyvate Media, Ty is from Wollongong, south of Sydney in the stunning Illawarra region. Captyvate is the brainchild of Ty, who has over 10 years' experience perfecting his craft and servicing people from all walks of life. From humble roots in action sport, Captyvate has progressed into specialist adventure travel and aspirational lifestyle content creation. Broad experience in various industries have allowed Ty to sharpen his skill set for a variety of situations and audiences. Ty has endured the most demanding conditions in the most remote locations to capture his amazing hyperlapse and dronelapse videos and adventure photography. I hope you enjoy the show. G'day, Ty. Great to have you on the podcast. How are you going?
I am doing great. It's been a long day of online conversation, so it's good to back it up with, I don't even know how many hours I've actually spent plugged into the metaverse, plugged in online, plugged in on Zoom calls and stuff today, but it's all good. It's all positive. It's good networking. It's part of what we're doing right now. Hey,
Absolutely.
It's good to actually have a face-to-face conversation with you.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you on, and sort of ever since I sort of met you in a space and saw a bit of your work, really chuffed that you said yes to coming on, and and thought I thought we could have a really good chat. So
straight up, we got a lot of free time in our hands right now, so let's make the most of it. Hey,
absolutely, that's it. So, what's the Ty Bowmaker story?
That's kind of hard to summarize, but as a creative, I've been creating for about 15 years. I started off filming skateboarding and action sports, me and my friends, and kind of just spiraled out of control from there. Has led me to travel the world prior to COVID, work for some very reputable clients, and ultimately allow me to live a lifestyle that I dreamed of. And I'm fortunate enough to be in a privileged position where I had family and friends to support me along the way, both financially, emotionally, and with resources and all of that thing. But I've been able to manifest my dreams, basically. And right now, if we want to talk about the Ty Bowmaker story, I'm sitting in my garage in a share house with my girlfriend, one of my lifelong friends, and I'm grounded, so to speak. It's COVID lockdown and hasn't stopped me from working, hasn't stopped me from being motivated and making these connections and stuff. So, I'm pretty happy with where I'm at right now, and I could talk a hell of a lot more about my background, but let's see where else this conversation goes.
No problem. Thanks, and it's good to hear you're in a good place. I know.
Yeah, man. I feel I am. Yeah.
Yeah, I know a lot of people have struggled through, particularly the lockdowns recently, and with the whole COVID thing, there's been a lot of stuff that hasn't been great for some people, but For me, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you was, just the positivity that I, get from you and every interaction that I've had with you, that really comes through in both the way that you talk as well as what you talk about.
Yeah, thank you, man. Silver linings.
Absolutely. So what's your earliest photography memory? How did you really get into it right at the beginning?
Other than shooting action sports, this is kind of a funny one that I haven't really expressed to anybody. I borrowed my stepfather's DSLR, went out to the front lawn and was taking photos of autumn leaves, close up macro photos, and trying to frame up between the the curve
Yeah.
in like the crusty leaf. And I think back upon it, I'm like, oh, that's so like cringy and dumb, and like those images are just shit. But I think it's like that curiosity to just kind of explore that craft.
Yeah.
And that was the first time that I'd really like consider it as something to be artistic, because prior to that, like using a camera was just more to like document.
Yep.
And to just so me and my friends could like watch each other skateboarding and riding bikes and stuff. But yeah, that's my first kind of like creative memory. And to be fair, I've always had a fascination with autumn, like come to think of it. And I think it largely stems from like that particular moment early in my career. And that would have been about 15 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I think everyone's sort of gone through that, and I've talked about it to people on the podcast before that everybody has to start somewhere, and everybody goes through their journey, their creative journey, at different paces, and and everyone is wherever they are, whenever they started, and they are where they are. One of the things that for me is really important to remember is that you are where you are, and you may or may not be as good as somebody else, and you shouldn't compare yourself to anyone else in terms of looking at your work versus their work.
Definitely. And even if you just listen to that story that I just said, like a lot of people are probably at the same stage in their creative journey, just like experimenting with little things like close to home and whatnot before they venture out a little bit further with their camera. So
absolutely. How did you get started into, you talked about, being able to lead the lifestyle. How did you get started in that and decide, I'd really like to do this full time, as opposed to hanging out and,
This is a funny story, because like I had a choice, right? Like towards the end of high school, like my attendance was just not there. Like I was given an ultimatum basically where it's like, you either start attending school more, or you need to find like another suitable avenue, like not just like drop out of school and do fuck all.
Yep.
And we discussed potential avenues, whether that be like go out and get a trade, like be a carpenter or something like that. But I was fortunate enough that I'd already kind of like found my passion in life. Like I already knew what I was going to do, and I'd already monetized that. Like my first paid gig was at the age of 15. Fantastic. And like I'm a 17-year-old heading into my final year of high school, and I'm kind of given this ultimatum, and I just kind of took a leap of faith. I just said, look, I don't want to be at school. Like I literally hated school. I did not enjoy having to go in that routine every single day. I felt like I was kind of just restricted in following my passion. And I feel like a lot of people will resonate with that statement. I'm not saying just go drop out of fucking school or whatever. There's definitely merit in that formal education. But for me personally, I was given that ultimatum, and I was fortunate enough that I had another route to go down, and I just pursued being a freelance artist from that moment forward. I've had moments of self-doubt, but I have never looked back and thought that was the wrong decision for me. And I'm just fortunate enough that I'd already come to that conclusion at such a young age. You hear of people that are like triple, quadruple my age and still don't know what their purpose is. But I feel like I had found that.
I joke to my family and people that ask me, that I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. And I'm well into my 50s. So.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as creatives, we hold on to that youthful spirit, like that curiosity to explore the world and create.
Yeah, I think if you keep that childlike curiosity close to the surface and you utilize that, it really does make it much easier to create artistically, because you can look at things in a different way. I noticed that early on with people saying, when I was taking photos back in the film days, that's a really interesting shot. It's not something that I would have thought to take a photo of, and and people saying, oh, you've got a good eye or whatever, and when you hear that, you kind of go, oh, okay, I'm obviously built a bit different, I guess, and you look at the world differently, I think. And a lot of
which
that,
is a blessing, not a curse.
Absolutely. For me, it's really been being able to say, okay, well, how do I turn this into something that I, can use and utilize, So have you, I guess, thought much about what it is that actually motivates you creatively? What is it what's the engine that gets Ty Bowmaker ticking?
Oh, see, I was like, prior to this podcast, I was actually thinking, I wish he had given me a list of questions so I can actually have a little bit more preparation for these type of things, because motivation and inspiration comes in so many different forms, right? Like, it's pretty hard for me off the top of my head to just be like, it's this thing, it's that thing, because it's a culmination of different things. And if I were to actually give you a truthful answer, anything that doesn't bring me negativity to my life motivates me.
Yep.
That's in its most basic kind of statement that I can make. My friends and family, a lot of the time, motivate me. Seeing people around me do well. And very recently, and this is a kind of like been a recent shift in my mindset, it motivates me to motivate other people.
Yep.
Like if I can showcase my work, especially if we want to tie this into a creative aspect, if I can showcase my work and people to resonate with that in a way that motivates them to get out there and try the same thing, that's a win in my books.
Yeah, great. So are there any particular things that you might be doing that you think are a little bit different to others?
Oh, well, we touched upon the drone lapsing stuff a little bit earlier. That directly pertains to NFTs. I don't know if I want to go down that NFT route just yet. I think if I were to actually kind of just look on a whole, and something that I've valued for the best part of my career is that I want to be a well-rounded artist. I don't want to be known as somebody who just does X or is a specialist in Y or is the best in the world at Z. I want to be a culmination of those things. And like, I'm a big advocate for balance. I love mountain biking. That's like, probably bike riding is my first and foremost passion within my life, because it allows me to stay fit. It gives me a sense of community. I can be creative because I can go out there and do some digging, or I can like ride in a particular way because you have your own style on a bike, right? So that for me is my first and foremost passion. Yeah, and I think like predominantly because I do have that background of like riding bikes my entire life and being like a bit of a daredevil and thrill seeker, and having a broad range of experience. Like, I've been to so many places all around the world, have engaged with people of all walks of life, have been to festivals and events and like all sorts of things. And I feel like all of those experiences make me a bit of like a boiling pot. And I want to try and share as much of that variety as possible. Like, if you were to scroll through my Instagram feed or my Twitter feed or whatever, it's all over the fucking place. And I take pride in that, because that's what makes me who I am. I'm a multi-dimensional person. I'm not like just somebody that goes out there and shoots storms or shoots astro or whatever. Like, I love it all. I want to capture it all. I want to showcase it all. So that's my point of difference, I feel.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So what's your approach to photography as it relates to, I guess, experience versus art? You mentioned, you started out, recording things, you and your mates skateboarding or whatever. When does that start to become art and, transcending into great art?
That's just an opinion. more or less. That's just my opinion, you know, if I answer this question truthfully.
Yep.
Because I feel like the difference between like documenting something and creating art is being able to present it in an aesthetic way. But
Sure.
my opinion of what is aesthetic is different to yours, is different to like my family's, etc. So I think that is a really difficult question to answer, and a big reason why great art is considered to be exactly that is because it resonates with the masses. It's because people like of all walks of life can appreciate that. So that might even be the question right there. If I can create something that is universally accepted to be pleasing, to be aesthetic, to share a beneficial message and to help other people, then maybe that's art, as opposed to just documenting.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Good thoughts. I like it. I really like it.
Yeah, and I'm trying to get as abstract as possible here because I don't want to try and sound like everybody else would right now, you know.
Sure. So I guess, you know, I think you have, but have you actively tried to be artistic in your photographic career? And
yeah, very much so.
How has that worked out for you? Do you feel that you are starting to get, you know, somewhat mass appeal and so forth? I mean, I don't think anyone in you know the creative arts is ever satisfied that they've, you know, created the last masterpiece they're ever going to create, and you know.
I agree. Yeah. So in regards to that, I definitely feel like I have forged my own path, so to speak, and I've definitely taken a unique approach to a lot of things that I've produced. And a big reason why I feel like I've been able to accomplish this is because I'm a big fan of other people's work. So inherently, I'm probably going to adopt people's work, but I'm also going to adapt their work as well. And I feel like that adaptation is a big reason for my success. Like, it's not as though I ever want to blatantly rip anybody off.
Yeah.
And I will always pay homage to people. If I seek inspiration from people, I'm going to put that in my caption, in my description, on my website or whatever, to tell people like, this is where I got this idea from. Or if people ask me like, oh, you know, like, did you think of this? Like, I've produced music videos, for example, where I've had ideas, and it's been from like YouTube tutorials. For example, my friends have been like, whoa, how the fuck did you think of that? I'm like, well, I didn't really think of that. Like, I just saw something on YouTube. I thought that was a great idea, and I applied it in this context. So yeah, that's the best way I can possibly answer that, I think.
Oh, sure. So when you know, let's say you're talking about either drone lapsing or, you know, your landscape photography and so forth, are you going into the field with a concept of what you want to do before the fact, or are you sort of going out into the field and reacting to the landscape or the light or whatever, or is it a combination of both?
Combination of both, but I would I'm pretty methodical. I like to make plans, and I'm going to be honest, I actually get real shitty if like my plans don't come to fruition. I'm like somewhat a perfectionist with a lot of things in life, and particularly with my work. Like, I take insane pride in my work, and I put in a lot of fucking effort for it, and I feel kind of robbed by life if I put in all this fucking effort for something and it doesn't go my way. And I know that's a bit of a childish response, and that's definitely something that I've like come to deal with maturity. Yep. But with that being said, yeah, I plan a lot, like sometimes to my detriment. But I feel like if you can plan something and pull it off, it's a hell of a lot more fucking rewarding than just like stumbling into a scenario. You know, that's also really cool to just be in the right place at the right time. Yeah. But a lot of the time, if you're calculated, you can indeed be in the right place in the right time. Absolutely. Like, I have a lot of friends who are landscape photographers, and the amount of research they're doing to produce a single image or like a composite or whatever is mind blowing. Like it's borderline fucking rocket scientist shit. Like the stuff that they're looking into, like the apps that they have to consult, etc. So I've got a lot of respect for people that like plan and reap the rewards from that. And I want to be one of those people. You know, I want to account for like the best and the worst in every scenario.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I know you and I, have done a bit of work with people with, that get into astro and that sort of thing, and some of the planning that goes into some of those astro shots that people do just blows my mind.
It's nuts, man.
I do mostly seascapes, so I'm all about tide, sunrise times, and sunset times and that sort of thing mostly, but.
Well, it's still like you have to consult a separate set of tools to what they're consulting. Like it's no different. It's just, well, it is different. It's a little bit different. That's
it is different. Shooting astro is very different to shooting a seascape.
I feel like I need to backtrack just a little bit to just provide a little bit more context in regards to like this drone lapsing stuff in particular. Because it is very methodical. There is a lot of planning. It's not as simple as just sending your fucking drone up in the sky and crossing your fingers that you're going to get a good result. Because first things first, you need to find a good setting, and you need to have an idea of like what motion is going to be in that setting. Because without motion, it's nothing. Like it's just static. You might as well just be sending your drone up there and taking a still image.
Before we go on, why don't you backtrack a little bit further for those that don't know or haven't heard the term drone lapsing before? Because I mean, and until I came across you and a couple of other people, I'd never really heard it before. I'd seen, I guess, time lapses, some of which were taken with drones, some of which were taken, on the ground. But is that all it is? Is it just a time lapse that's taken from a drone, or is it more?
Pretty much than that. Yeah. There's more to it than that. And full disclosure, before we delve into this topic any further, I'm not the inventor of this technique, and it comes back to what I was saying before. Like, I'm very inspired by people around me. If I actually want to give you the name of the dude that invented this technique, his name is Brian Bloss. Rest in peace. I actually never had the opportunity to meet this man, but he's extremely influential in the drone world, the Hollywood cinema world, and TV world. He worked on Survivor, like traveling the world. Survivor, and what's the other one? The Amazing Race. He worked on those. He worked on those two TV series, like the American versions of those, traveling the world, capturing time lapse and drone footage for those shows, and was heavily connected in the drone and time lapse world, like globally. And he suddenly passed away. And he was very well connected with some close friends of mine, and I just want to pay homage to him. Like that, I need to give props where it's due. So he basically invented this technique, I guess you'd call it. I'm gonna say 5 to 10 years ago. I don't know exactly when, but he was using a platform. I think it's called Litchi, right? And Litchi is like you can set coordinates and flight paths and stuff like that and save them. This is prior to DJI even offered that function within their drone apps. Nowadays it's so fucking easy to do one in the DJI app. Like they have a hyperlapse function. You can set waypoints, which is what I do the majority of the time. It's either I'm setting waypoints, like 1 or 2, maybe 3 waypoints that the drone flies in between, or I'm setting a direction and it flies in a straight line. So as I said, I've got to give homage to those guys because they're kind of like the pioneers in getting this all set up and whatnot, and being able to adapt those techniques and for them to just become so accessible to people like myself. Like I've felt inspired and motivated by those guys, and I'm sure if Brian was here and I was able to tell him, dude, thank you for like motivating me to put this body of work out there and just like explore this new frontier of creating. But once again, like drone lapsing is basically a hyperlapse or a time lapse that's captured with a drone. There's multiple ways you can go about doing this, but DJI makes it incredibly easy with their new drones. And typically speaking, it's literally as simple as flying between 2 points, setting up those waypoints, and you will dictate how often you want the photos to be captured and how long it takes for that flight path to be completed. I've found that the sweet spot for images that needs to be captured is around 330, because typically if you want 10 seconds, you need 300 images, and just having that little second or two on either side is a good little buffer zone. Yeah. Another good tip, no wind. Just try avoid wind. And as I said before, you want to just plan for whatever motion is within the scene. So like if there's like a motorway with cars, or you can see some fog evaporating, or some movement in the clouds, or movement in the sun, or something like that. Without movement, these things are nothing, as I said. Like you might as well just take a still image. Sure. Yeah. So I don't really know what else to say about drone lapsing, other than I have a collection on OpenSea. Make sure you go check that out. But yeah, it comes back to what I was saying before. I've had a lot of good feedback from people about that, and I tell them, look, I didn't create this technique. Like I'm not the founder, but if I can motivate you to get out there and give it a go, that's a big win in my books. Like I can't really ask for much more than that, because at the end of the day, like I still do this commercially. So, you know, if I can share it with other people and maybe give them the power to pursue that themselves, that's amazing.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess I did interrupt you. You were in the middle of talking about, I guess, how you planned and set it up.
Yeah.
So, you know, you talked about the setup of the shots and everything. What else? What are you? I guess what's your process for thinking about it before you go out? You know,
before I go out. So,
because to me, what's interesting is, you know, that impetus to go out on a particular day at a particular time.
Yeah.
I know what drives me, but I'm interested in hearing that from you know, some of my guests around.
That's an interesting way of wording that question. And if I were to, it's like a lot of landscape photography, you need to look at the weather conditions. That's like the first thing you do. You want to look for as little wind as possible. That's probably the number one determining factor. Second one's going to be time of day. You probably want to try and get golden light inherently, or like sunrise and sunset where there's like those lights coming on. That's also pretty cool.
Yep.
Other than that, you know, it's actually real good, Google Maps and Google Earth, like just for kind of like looking at things from a top-down perspective and doing a bit of like location research, because I'm the type of person that if I'm going somewhere I've never been, I will utilize the internet to my advantage as much as possible. Like I'll do a pretty thorough Google search. Like I've been on road trips for like months on end, like as bad as this sounds, like almost constantly on my phone, just like researching, right, like where am I headed to next and how can I capture this in the best way possible? Because I'm a freak about like capturing imagery. There is quite a bit of planning prior to going out there, but like everything in life, you can do all the fucking planning in the world, shit will always go pear-shaped. Like if it can, it will. And there's been so many instances where I've like planned full trips with the intention of flying my drone, and there's just been too much wind, or it's been raining, or other circumstances, you know?
Yeah. So
you're going to roll with the punches.
Absolutely. Oh, that's photography, isn't it? You know, sometimes sometimes you're going to get the light you expect, and sometimes you're not. You know, but you're only ever going to show the times when the light was right.
Exactly. If you don't rock up, then you're not going to get any light at all. So
that's exactly it. Yeah, you can't catch the photos you don't go out to take.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to talk, I guess, a little bit. So once you've planned it, obviously you've charged your batteries and you've sort of mapped out your ideas. So is it as simple as just whacking the coordinates in and the number of frames that you want to take, and then up she goes? And
it's never that simple.
I know
Nothing's as soon as you put a drone into the equation, nothing is simple. And I've spoken about this before, like publicly, that I get real anxious flying a drone. I think it's because I've just had so many bad experiences in the past, honestly. And a lot of those have been entirely my fault, and I'm aware of that. But I think that awareness of what can go wrong, it just means that you're on guard every time. And I think the same can be said about a lot of things in life. You kind of like start out a little bit like blissfully ignorant as to like what the consequences can potentially be. And flying a drone is stressful to say the least, but when you can capture great imagery, it's a relief, that's for sure. And every time my girlfriend's probably fed up of hearing this, but like every time I catch my drone, I just say to her, that's a relief, because it is. Like I'm on my 8th drone now, for context. Since late 2016. So it's been a pretty severe learning curve. In regards to the complexity of actually capturing things though, like once again, aside from all the usual variables like birds, wind, obstacles, etc., you've obviously got to factor in battery life, and that's a pretty big thing. Sometimes I'll even have to like send the drone up, mark the coordinates. You can save those coordinates, bring my drone back to land, swap the battery out so I have a full battery for that flight path, send it back up, and then capture it that way.
Well, I was going to ask, do you do all of that? Do you try to do all of that on one battery run, or do you sometimes have to expand?
It depends. It depends. And I'm somewhat of a nomad, like when all of this COVID bullshit's not going on. So if I'm out and about on the road, it becomes a very big challenge to keep on top of like charging drone batteries. I usually rely upon like my car to charge them, or like overnight accommodation or whatever. And it's just something to be mindful of, because you've only got a limited amount of drone batteries. Like what I do anyway, I usually travel with 4 in total. And those will last half an hour at best. And that amount of time goes really quickly if you're shooting sunrise, sunset, and in between on a single day. And then it's like, well, then you've got to worry about charging those up for like the next day if you're working on a commercial project or something like that. So the batteries are definitely a pretty big consideration. Nowhere near as bad as like FPV drones. But yeah, other than that, I think I've pretty much covered like most of the considerations. Obviously, you've got like no fly zones and stuff, but that just falls under the category of just regular consideration for flying a drone. There's no reason why I would be flying in this manner that would make me exempt from any laws or any other like considerations that people would regularly have to be aware of while flying a drone.
Yeah, cool. So you've put the drone up and you've drained your batteries and you've got your 300 odd shots. What's next? You get them home, and how do you process? What do you?
I've got a very particular workflow. So obviously these are captured on like DJI drones, and that gives me the ability to capture raw files. And a big reason, as most photographers are aware, that I'm capturing raw files is that it gives me not only great resolution, but a lot of flexibility in post-production. And another huge reason that I need these raw files, and this is often when I'm shooting at times of day like sunrise and sunset, when the light is inconsistent, and this is just across the board for time lapsing in general. you're typically using a combination of Lightroom and LR time-lapse, and they're just industry standard time-lapsing software. So I'll do like whatever post-processing I need to do in those two programs. They're quite complex. I don't want to delve into it too much, but
yeah, that's fine.
after
I don't want to do a tutorial.
yeah. So after that, you can basically drag and drop those files with their metadata, like the XMP files associated with those raw files, directly into After Effects, and it reads those as raw files.
Right.
So you can make a sequence of those raw files in After Effects as a video file, essentially. But for anybody that's unfamiliar with After Effects, it's predominantly visual effects software, but it also has a very, very powerful tool or plugin that's used for stabilizing footage.
Right.
And every time that I'm shooting one of these drone lapses, I need to go in there and I need to set what is called track points. And that essentially analyzes the video footage at a single point that you dictate, like a fixed point, whether it be a building or like a mountaintop or whatever it is. And that, like, people are like, oh, how do you get your footage so smooth? Like, that's
Sure.
how. After Effects, track points. And that's common knowledge. Like, once again, this is not me being a fucking expert. All of this knowledge is out there on YouTube. And this is the beauty of the age that we're in right now. Like,
absolutely, yeah.
If you want to figure something out, YouTube, Google, talk to people on Twitter Spaces, send a DM to somebody whose work that you appreciate. But yeah, sorry to go off on a little tangent there. Once you're done in After Effects, and you export what I call a working file, which is like a high resolution file that does not have any like saturation or contrast. It's like a flat picture profile, so you can edit it in whatever way you want down the line. It has things like white balance and like your lens correction and stuff embedded within there, but from there you're going to drag that into Premiere Pro or like DaVinci or whatever else you use to edit your videos. And that's where I do like the sound design and the color grading and any other visual effects, like the motion blur and whatnot. And then I export it from there, goes live on the internet. I know I probably made that sound a lot more complex than it actually is. But the thing with this workflow is that it is very time consuming. Like, not only are you, if I were to actually give you a rough estimate of how long it takes to post process these time lapses, if I'm shooting like a sunset or something like that, like a day to night, like an hour and a half or something like that, I'm probably spending double, triple that editing it. For these drone lapses, I'm probably spending like a good couple of hours still, maybe like half a working day or something like that, just like waiting for these things to fucking process. And I've got a pretty beefed up like MacBook Pro, like the highest spec you can possibly get, predominantly because I travel, like I need a laptop, right? But this thing's a beast, and I'm trying to edit like 6K raw files into a 4K video file, and dare I say most people would probably struggle to like even achieve that with your average computer and whatnot. So it is a pretty intensive post-processing procedure, and I hope it's something that doesn't go unnoticed, because I feel like that's where the true beauty of these pieces, these drone lapses and just these drone hyperlapse techniques comes to life. Like, without the post-processing software and the technology being as advanced as it is, this stuff would not be possible. I'm blown away by technology on a regular basis. But yeah, this stuff it's amazing. It really is amazing what technology allows me to do, like to capture these scenes in a way that people have never had the opportunity to perceive before. And I guess in a sense, like when I'm going out to these locations, I do want to showcase them in a way that nobody would have seen. Like, that's a big motivating factor for me.
Yeah. So when you spitting them out the other end, are they're coming out as a GIF file or some other video format? What format do you?
MP4 typically.
MP4.
That's not like my working file. My working file is like a ProRes, like a really big file size. But like if I'm putting it onto like OpenSea or even just Instagram or whatever, it's always an MP4 file. That's just like industry standard. It's kind of like an MP3, like the equivalent of an MP3 music file in video.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So
there's a couple of considerations in regards to like export settings just to kind of get that quality fine-tuned. But once again, like that information is readily available on the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. Really interesting to, I guess, get in under the skin of some of these processes.
I hope that provides people with a bit more like context as to what goes on, because it's a very lengthy process.
Yeah.
And I'll understand if people are bored by it, but for those people that are interested, I feel like they're going to gain a lot of value out of what I had to say. So
absolutely. You're based in the Illawarra region. How far, and what's the furthest you've got on the road to do a shoot? Or what would you normally do? How far afield would you normally go?
Oh shit, that's a tricky question to answer. So for a bit of context, anybody that's unfamiliar with my hometown of Wollongong, Wollongong, New South Wales, Australia.
Colloquially known as the Gong.
The Gong, yeah, the Gong. Shout outs the Gong. So I love my home. I'm a huge advocate for where I'm from, and I've pretty much exhausted my shooting opportunities here, like as you do for the best part of like a 15 odd year career as a creator. And that's been a huge catalyst for me to travel elsewhere and go on road trips and that type of thing. My most recent like big road trip was with my girlfriend, 2.5 months, living out of a Honda CRV, fully loaded, bogged down, like tires in the wheel arches, scrubbing on every little bump in the road. So we drove up to Cairns, which is like non-stop 30 hours worth of driving, but we broke it up in about 2.5 months. And I was like capturing the entire way, like creating content. Like I've got some of my drone lapses from there, etc. And then if we want to think even further afield, like I've been lucky enough to travel a lot of places all around the world for work and for leisure. Yeah.
Do you think the pandemic has changed your attitude towards traveling and photography in particular?
Yeah, definitely. That's a loaded question, mate. Just give me a moment.
Yeah, you're right.
Because I got to figure out how to break this question down, because there's a couple of aspects there that I want to address. Okay, so I said this today in a tweet actually, that like I feel really fortunate to have done so much travel prior to the pandemic. I feel like this pandemic, I see it kind of similar to something like 9/11 that just shakes up the entire travel industry.
Yep.
Travel is going to be a lot more difficult here on out, I think, not just economically, but in terms of just like A, needing to be vaccinated, B, having to wear masks on flights, B, having to get COVID, C, having to get COVID tests, D, having to do like isolation when you arrive at destinations, and like all these things, mate. Like I know it's different all around the world, but like it's more difficult, it's more challenging, and it hasn't even been possible for us Australians since like early last year. Yep. So with that being said, I'm incredibly fortunate that I've been able to travel a lot, and honestly, I took it for granted. And it's been kind of nice to have this moment of just being settled, being grounded. Like since I was 17 and left school, I've just been go, like being real switched on and proactive with work and my career and with traveling and creating. and honestly feel like I'm kind of like settled down, and I've reached like I'm still young. I'm 26. I don't want to sound like I'm a wise old monk or something, but I feel like I've reached a point of maturity where I am content with being in one spot for a little while and actually taking the time to focus on my future, to focus on strengthening myself, to focus on strengthening my relationship with my family and my friends, build a bit more of a sense of community, and give back to other people, because I have had quite a selfish mindset with just like living my best life, inverted commas. As dumb as that sounds, like I have been having a fucking great time. And it's kind of nice to just be a bit settled, reflect upon all the great times I've had, but also think ahead into the future, and maybe just have a little bit more intention with my travel and stuff like that. A lot of it has been very like hedonistic, and I think heading into the future, I really want to like, I've been talking to people on Twitter about like, fuck, as soon as I can, I want to get over to the US and just do a trip around and just hang out with people, connect with people face to face. And same goes for like, I've got heaps of friends in Europe that I want to go catch up with. My girlfriend is from England, so like, obviously as soon as we can, we're going to go fly over there and catch up with her family, etc. And I'm really going to cherish that experience.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have seen this as a bit of a reset moment for, not just travel in general, but their own specific, the way they think about travel, the way that they, look at it. As you said, it was something that everybody, that could afford it took for granted. You could just, pay your money, jump on a flight, go wherever you want.
Cheap as chips, mate, for us privileged white folk,
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably a lot of what you were just saying, that resonates with me in terms of, thinking about why you're traveling, thinking about where you're going, and what it is that you're doing there.
Yeah, definitely. And the cultures that you're going to immerse yourself in, because it's quite easy, once again, as a privileged white male, to just have the cash and go to these beautiful places with a culture that's completely different to yours, and kind of like not even acknowledge it in the way that you should. I'm not going to say that I like disrespected anybody or anything like that. Like, it's more like I would go to these places and I would see it more of like, oh, I just want to see these crazy sights and capture these crazy images and stuff like that, as opposed to thinking, all right, like, what is the culture here? How do these people, how do they feel about the politics and their social situation, and what's their standard of living like, and what do they do for work, and do they have the opportunities that I have? Like, and if not, how do we enable these people to be able to live a life that I do, where they can have creative expression? And I think I just want to be a bit more thoughtful as I'm traveling, moving into the future.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Well, I think that for me also extends into the environment.
100%. Yeah.
There's a lot of, and I know one of the spaces we were in, actually, I think it might have been this morning, was there was a bit of a discussion about the fact that people might geotag somewhere and then see that shot. Everybody then says, okay, I want to go and take that shot because it's some iconic location, or it's a new location that they've never seen photographed before. And I think there's a lot of people that now have stopped geotagging, stopped mentioning where it is that they've taken the shot from, simply because they recognise that the popularity of a location can actually end up destroying it, or close to destroying it.
Yeah, it's not just out of respect for that like landscape, but out of respect for like the local people as well.
Absolutely. So when you're out and about, in the environment, what are you thinking about in terms of making sure that, either, I guess it extends but a little bit beyond just, leave no trace, you walk in and out of there with only leaving your footprints, but how do you see that educational piece and the role of educating other photographers and other people out in the general public about some of these delicate landscapes and so forth?
This is a tricky topic to tackle.
But I like the tricky questions.
Yeah. All right. So this is something I've definitely considered quite a bit. I just want to give a shout out to my girlfriend, because she's kind of given me a bit of a refreshed lease on life. Like I met her prior to COVID, and I think spending a lot of time with her and having some good existential conversations about our environment, and the way that we treat Mother Nature, has been really good for my soul and just for my outlook on life. So with that being said, we have made a lot of lifestyle choices in order to play our part. Things like reducing and borderline eliminating single-use plastic, especially when we're traveling around. Like we've always got keep cups. We always try and go to like fruit markets and stuff where we can, where they're not using like plastic and shit like that. Like just these all sound like dumb little things, but the way that I look at it is, if I'm doing these things personally, I, within my moral compass, can't feel bad. And I understand that we all do things that have a negative consequence on the environment. But the way that I look at it is, in this day and age, with the civilization that we've created, it's inevitable. It's inescapable unless you're going to go live in a fucking hippie commune in the forest. It's inevitable. So
even that commune is going to have an impact on the environment in some way.
Exactly. Yeah. So to me personally, it's just about minimizing my personal impact. And I've also considered, how can I educate other people? But I have a bit of a moral conflict, because I see myself as more of an entertainer than an informer or an educator. So obviously I want to try and be an activist for the environment, but maybe it's me being a bit of a pussy, because I just don't want backlash, honestly. Like because there's always going to be people that are going to come along and just be those climate change deniers and just be fuckwits and just be like, oh, it doesn't matter, the world's doomed. But the fact of the matter is, there are so many things that all of us can do on a daily basis, and decisions that we can make that attribute to the bigger picture, even if it is to do with where you spend your money and the businesses that you support, and something as simple as just refusing to take a plastic bag or whatever. That all adds up. Like, imagine if we all adopted that mindset. I'm not going to preach any further, because I just don't personally feel like that's my place. I want to bring joy to people. I want people to see the beauty of this world, and hopefully that alone will discourage them from tarnishing this planet.
Yeah, no, that's great. So what do you think you've learned about the world through photography and
everything? I would say like maybe 3/4 of my intellect up here. Realistically, we spoke about this before. I don't know why this was the first thing that popped to mind, but just maintaining your youthful essence and your youthful outlook on life and your curiosity and passion for things. Because once again, I'm in a privileged situation where I've actually been able to pursue my dreams and pursue my dream career. And that makes me very, it gives me a very positive outlook on life. And I really hope that people can resonate with that in one way or another, like to get out there, stay motivated, keep creating.
So what's the most memorable experience you've had when you're out shooting?
So this is why you need to send me these questions beforehand, because this is so hard when I hate when people ask me this question. I don't know about most memorable, but this is like probably most life-changing. I said this to my friends the other day. Like, my most life-changing experience. I was 15 years old, and at this stage, I'd been immersed in the sport of mountain biking and filming and documenting like my friends and even some like pretty high profile athletes and events for about 3 years. And I caught wind of like what was called an underground race, where basically they just go into the forest, they set up this remote timing system, and it was hosted by a magazine, like a very reputable international magazine called Revolution Mountain Bike Magazine. And as a 15-year-old kid, they offered me $500 to drive 3 hours from Wollongong to fucking Hampton Forest out past the Blue Mountains near Oberon. You know where I'm talking about?
I know where you are,
Yeah. So my mum,
out near Shooters Hill.
At the age of 15 years old, fucking God bless my mother. Oh, Mum, I love you. I don't like. She's technologically retarded. I'm gonna have to just play this podcast for her. But my mother drives me 3 hours each way for me to go do that. Like, this is the privilege I'm talking about, and I'm never going to disregard this privilege that I had the support network to allow me to get to where I am today. But the point is, like, that was a turnkey moment. Somebody was willing to pay me to go into the forest and film a sport that I love. Like, I love being in nature and I love mountain biking. And then consequently, I love filming.
Yeah.
In that, under those circumstances, and somebody wanted to pay me for that, and I'm a kid.
Mind blowing.
Yeah, that like, I'm sure there will be many more moments that like come along in my life that really shake things up. But if I look retrospectively, that is the life-changing moment, because if that never happened, if somebody hadn't offered to pay me, it's not like I went out asking for money. That's the difference. There's a lot of creatives that come into this industry nowadays that look at it as a money-making venture, and that's all good and well. There's space for that. They can do that if they want to, but they're going to hit a ceiling, and that ceiling is going to be their fucking motivation, because they're going to see it as a fucking job and a grind. They're not going to be passionate about it, and nobody's going to be paying them to do what they love.
Yeah.
And once again, I'm fortunate that I had been given that opportunity, but that is a turnkey moment. And I would encourage everybody to try and get to that point in whatever outlet you're passionate about. Because honestly, if you're good enough at something, doesn't matter what it is, A, people are going to resonate with it, and B, somebody is almost certainly going to pay for it. If they can see merit in that skill or your perspective or your idea, they're going to pay for it. It's just a matter of time, a matter of perfecting your craft. And I was no means perfect at my craft at this stage. Like, I look back, I can't even watch that video that I got paid $500 for. Like, you would have to pay me $500 right fucking now to go and watch that video. I'm not wasting my time to go and watch it. But the thing is, that's a stepping stone. And I feel like people really need those stepping stones to break through to the next stage in their career.
Absolutely. Yeah. So while we're on the subject of making money, I mean, there's lots of different ways. One of the most recent is NFTs.
Good segue.
I thought so. So tell us about your experience with NFTs a little bit. And, there was an earlier episode that I had with Jack Wardale, which was a bit of a primer. So, I don't think I want to touch on too much about what we talked about there. If you don't know what NFTs are, go back, listen to that episode. And, I couldn't tell you what number it is, but go and find the Jack Wardale episode, listen to that. That gives you a pretty good primer on what they are. But what's Ty Bowmaker's experience in NFTs, and how did you get into it and why?
Well, first of all, number one experience getting to meet Mr. Grant Swinburne right here that's conducting the podcast. Thank you, Grant. Second of all, shout outs to Jack. I haven't even met Jack, but he's a real good dude. He's done a lot to help out, like, not just you and I, but a lot of people. So if anybody hasn't listened to that podcast, he's very well spoken, and I'm sure he has a lot of great insight to provide for anybody that's kind of curious about A, what an NFT is, and B, what's so fucking great about the community that we're trying to build, right?
That's right.
So with that being said, I'm going to directly quote somebody else. I believe Laurie has been on your podcast.
He most certainly has, Laurie Grace. Yeah, that's
there
another
we go.
episode.
Okay. Yeah. Go back and listen to Laurie's podcast if you haven't already. So Laurie has said, "I came for the coin. I stayed for the community."
Yep.
This is pertaining to NFTs, right? And I resonate with that a lot. Like I had peers that were in the US that were selling NFTs, and they were doing it for a couple of months, maybe like 2 or 3 months. And I just thought to myself, this is fucking dumb. Like, what? This makes no fucking sense. Like, how are you? That doesn't even add up. Why are people spending money on that?
Yeah, but buying a JPEG with money
So
that's
obviously,
not paper money,
Exactly. And this is the backlash that people get. It's because there's not the fiat currency attached to it. But there is, because the fiat currency has gone into it. But anyway, I don't want to go into those technicalities. I think if I were to truly take a step back, I had a lot of skepticism, but I couldn't deny what I saw happening. I couldn't deny what the successes that my peers were experiencing. And they ultimately gave me the opportunity. They they said, look, this is what this is the direction you could potentially be going down. They provided me with a couple of links and that type of thing. I read into it a little bit further. And I was in a position where COVID lockdown started, and this was late June. And I'd already been researching for probably like the best part of 3 months, sitting in Clubhouse rooms, going onto YouTube, going onto Google every day.
Yep.
And just doing little bits and pieces of research, like in my downtime, like between other activities, and just kind of learning more about cryptocurrency and learning more about NFTs, because as I said, I genuinely thought it was dumb. And the thing that we have discussed, Grant, and this is the most important thing, in my opinion, and I believe this is going to be the most important thing heading into the future. Well, it's two aspects. The first one's going to be mass adoption, but the second aspect, which is more important, is it pertains to how the masses will adopt NFTs.
Yep.
And I don't know if this has been touched upon by anybody else, but real world transactions, or real world kind of like credibility for these tokens. If, let's say, for example, you purchase a digital token, and in the real world, that gives you access to all of the Los Angeles Lakers games. Yep. Or you buy an NFT from Nike and it gives you access to one of 100 shoes that are produced all around the world. Like, there's only 100 of these in the world, but because you own that NFT,
you own that token,
you have access to it. Exactly. Yeah. And I think once I understood that potential, it changed my whole mindset around this marketplace and around what I can provide other people. And I'm only just scratching the surface. Like, I've got a whole bloody well fucking note of ideas of like stuff that I want to execute that I haven't even expanded upon. It's just, they're there. The point is, there's going to be a lot of room for expansion heading into the future. Is there anything in particular that you actually want me to touch upon in regards to NFTs? Like, because I mean, don't want to go too broad here. That's all.
I guess I'd like to pick up on the community aspect in particular, because that's something that I don't think a lot of people outside that community have kind of got their heads around. And I was having a chat actually with Jeff Freestone on Twitter, just in tweets, not on a space or anything.
Yep.
And he was sort of asking the question. He hasn't gotten into it, or hadn't gotten into it at the time this Twitter exchange occurred. And one of the things that, he was questioning and trying to understand was how this community actually came to be. And I think, we've touched on it a couple of times. A big part of it is this culmination. Yeah, there was Clubhouse before Spaces in Twitter actually came about. And a lot of this is generated through Twitter and those Spaces being sort of the first time in social media history where, in conjunction with a mainstream social media platform, you've actually been able to hear the voice of the people that you might be interacting with on Twitter. And
that is a huge catalyst. But if I were to look at the root cause for this community building, it's because people are fed up of competing against each other. I know I certainly am, especially because I've been through that freelance grind for the best part of 10 years now, and it fucking sucks. It's not fun. And I've got a lot of friends that I have to compete against for contracts. And honestly, there is resentment for those people. At least I feel that way. And I know that it's not right, but I'm only human, right? Yeah. And I feel resentment towards my friends when they may secure job contracts and that type of thing over me, because it's well, why didn't I get that? And then you have these kind of these existential fears. You have this imposter syndrome that creeps up.
Am I not good enough?
Yeah, exactly. And I have heard of people experiencing that within the NFT community, but I believe that if they were approaching not specifically the marketplace, but the collector creator dynamic with a bit of a different mindset, where they're really they're more appreciative of that networking, as opposed to just selling their artwork, they're probably going to see more success, and they're going to benefit a lot more from it as well, because it kind of was back to what I was saying before about coming for the coin, staying for the community, because it is real easy to just look at this as a quick cash grab. But then when you look at the way that, dude, if you fucking scroll down my Twitter profile, I'm sharing more work from other people than my own work.
Yeah.
I'm retweeting stuff all day, every day, because I'm so inspired by what other people are doing. I want to share that with other people. But not only do I want to share that, I want to uplift those artists, and I want more prospective collectors to see that work. Yeah. And that's a big part of the community, is that we all know that if we work together to get the right eyes on each other's work, it's like a ripple effect.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody benefits from it outwards, unless you're going to just be one of those selfish people that just try and take the cash and run. But we tend to establish that those people aren't welcome here, and it's pretty. You're going to figure out pretty quickly if people have those intentions anyway, because they're not really willing to have an open dialogue or really contribute to conversation. It's more hey, here's my work.
Buy it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's got a lot to do with just uplifting others. And I think I said earlier in this podcast, there's something very motivational about motivating other people. Any success in sales that I have seen, I want to see for everybody around me tenfold.
Mm.
That's going to make me more fucking happy than selling out my own work, seeing everybody else around me succeed at the same time. Because like you, I'm not placing all my eggs in this basket. It's a good little side hustle or whatever. That's right. I've been immersing myself in a lot more recently, just simply because I haven't had real world job prospects. So it has kind of been a bit of a silver lining, in a sense, that I have had the time to dedicate to just building my online presence, so to speak. Whether that be NFTs on my own website or whatever, it doesn't matter. All of that comes down to building a community of people that are interested in your work, and it's a mutual interest.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's, one of the things that I certainly noticed, and I'll freely admit, went in, with that initial mindset. Oh, well, here's an opportunity to make a bit of money if you can, But I also, like any, in inverted commas, investment or, as I call it, gambling. Never gamble more than you're prepared to lose. So
Yeah, 100%.
I went into it with the mindset that, okay, well, if I don't sell a piece, why would I worry? If I put it out there and nobody buys it, well, either I haven't found the right buyer or I haven't sold it in the right way. But then, as you said, you get into spaces and you start to find like-minded people that have this passion for not just selling their own work, but selling everybody else's as well,
and collecting art as well.
And collecting
but before I had even released any work online, I had supported my peers who had put me onto NFTs. I loaded my wallet up. I purchased their NFTs before I'd even put anything on OpenSea.
Yeah.
And that's A, because I wanted to support them and invest in their creative journey. And B, because I think like collecting art is amazing. I've commissioned my friends to make art like around my house, etc. Like I've paid for paintings overseas when I've been traveling and had them shipped back to Australia because I love art. I love collecting art, and this is a new frontier for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the future of it is, pretty much, whatever anyone can imagine, to be honest, because you can get crossovers between that virtual world where the NFTs exist as a, at a base level as a JPEG, all the way through to, physical manifestations of that. You have a look at some of the work that Ruben Wu has done recently, where he's actually worked, with some techies to come up with this display technology, which isn't an LCD screen. So it's not just a standard TV or computer screen. This is actually a piece of art that displays different light in different light. And, it's amazing looking technology, and it's pushing that physical art world along.
I don't know if I'm familiar with what you're talking about, but can you send me a message?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like later, even later on, if you want to, just so I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, no worries. Ruben's stuff is absolutely amazing. I mean, he was doing some amazing just photography and video work with drones, particularly nighttime.
I do remember seeing his drone work, with the long exposures.
Well, he's extended and expanded that in the NFT space, and he's actually worked with some technology guys to come up with this new display technique, and it is mind-blowing when you see it in its physical form. I mean, I've only seen video of it so far, but it really gets you thinking about what the possibilities might be.
So like digital displays basically in real life.
Kinda, yeah, but it's, as I say, it's not a computer screen. So it's a piece of it is actually an artwork in itself, and the light and the techniques that they've used to add light to it. I don't know, because he's been fairly tight-lipped about it, and quite rightly, because there's probably
sounds intriguing.
Yeah, there's some patents and whatever involved in it, no doubt. But just seeing some of what he's doing. But I mean, he's not the only one. There's people like Ben Strauss with his 24-hour.
Yeah, that stuff's insane.
And it just blows my mind that you could literally take this stuff anywhere you like.
Yeah, that's it, mate. Some of the ideas I have, it's a combination of factors, but it's more like I just got to meet the right people that can help me execute it.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of things, and I think a real good thing about this community building is that you can make some pretty incredible connections. And even if within that network, you don't know somebody will know somebody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All you got to do is like put a tweet out there, put an Instagram story out there, whatever, and just see who replies. No harm done.
Somewhere, that's right. And if no one replies, okay, you haven't found the right people yet. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's it. All right, we've been going for a little while, so probably need to think about wrapping up. Are there any other photographers out there that you think I should be talking to on the podcast?
Have you spoke to Gab Scanu yet?
Not yet, but he's definitely one that I've got on the list. Yeah.
I'll put in a good word for you. I don't know him personally, but he's been very active like in the like Twitter and NFT photography community lately, and I think he's honestly, like, I'm a little bit biased because I'm just a fucking huge fan of his work, but if I were to pick somebody who's kind of at the forefront of Aussie photographers in NFTs, he's the man right now. Like, his pieces are selling for multiple ETH, and he already has so much credibility behind his work. That'd be my pick. Like, I would love to just like hear a little bit. I already know like quite a bit about his story and stuff anyway, but I feel like you could really pick his brain with some unique questions that would bring a lot of benefit to your audience.
Brilliant.
All but right. Yeah, otherwise, the only other person, and he's probably going to be pretty hard to get a hold of, is Alex Kwan. In the US, he was originally based in Chicago. He's now based in LA, and he's the peer of mine that I was mentioning earlier on. Basically, put me onto NFTs. Like, I'm a collector of his work, and he's come from a financial background. Like, he worked like the financial 9-to-5 grind and absolutely hated it, and then became a full-time creative, more or less, and is now quite literally flipping JPEGs. And yeah, he's a super interesting guy. If you guys aren't following Alex, Alex Q-I-A-N, Alex Kwan, his work's phenomenal, really intelligent dude, like just really switched on with crypto as well, which I think is really important. And something that I need to learn a hell of a lot fucking more, which is just really hard with like all things technology. There's so many layers that you need to understand.
Absolutely. Yeah, because it's not necessarily just about the NFTs or the JPEGs, as you say.
They're financial markets at the end of the day. So
that's right. That's absolutely right. All right, I got one more question for you, and for me, it's probably the most important. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
Oh, I knew this was coming. I've got a very on the fence response towards this, and this is like, I like to adopt this approach with a lot of things in life. I don't care if you put pineapple on pizza. Like, if that's what floats your boat, then that's all good and well. Like, it's not my pizza. I don't have to eat it. It doesn't harm me to look at it. So you enjoy.
Yeah.
I like pineapple on my pizza from time to time. If somebody's got like a ham and pineapple pizza, I'll definitely have a slice. Like, I'm not going to turn it down. I'm a hungry boy, you know. But
that's right.
I would never go to a pizza store and order a pizza like with the intention of it having pineapple on there. And as somebody that has visited Italy and had traditional Italian pizza, I think it's borderline a fucking crime to basically put anything but like cheese, a bit of basil and tomato on there. But like, that's a completely different debate. Let's not go down that path. So yes, pineapple on pizza, if you want it, you fucking send it. You live your life, you enjoy it. Don't harm other people. For the most part, don't break the law. Take care of your family and friends. Don't know what else to say on that topic.
Fantastic.
All pineapples matter.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks very much for spending the time with me, Ty.
It's okay. It's been a fucking great yarn, dude. I know I said I'm like, no, we can probably like keep this pretty limited, but it's good. Once we actually get a bit of a flow going with the conversation, it's nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what it's about. It's meant to be a conversation, not an interrogation.
Yeah. I've enjoyed it.
Good. All right. Well, I've certainly enjoyed catching up with you, and fantastic to learn a bit more about how you do what you do. Where can people find your work?
People can find my work at my website, first and foremost. That is captyvate.com. On top of that, I've been incredibly active on Twitter lately. So that's once again at Captyvate on Instagram. Otherwise, you can try and track me down in the forest or doing some other wild shit somewhere out there in nature.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thanks again, mate.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on here. Just some final words for the audience as well. If you're feeling down today, just remember there are brighter times ahead. There's a silver lining to every scenario, whether you realize it today or you realize it in a year's time.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, mate. And, it's really good to remind people that not everything's as bad as it might seem.
No, definitely not. Yeah. No. There's always, it could always be worse,
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work and this podcast at grantswinburnephotography.com. I'm also on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I'm Grant Swinburne and hope to see you out shooting soon.